it's Marley. Welcome back to my channel, Type 1 Reader. Today I'm going to be kicking off a brand new reading vlog where I'm going to be reading book recommendations from 3 of my favorite booktubers. So I am a huge consumer of booktube content. I'm subscribed to so many booktubers that I am perpetually behind in watching my subscriptions. I'm always like a month behind because I want to watch so many creators. But there are 3 in particular that stand out to me as my favorites that when I see one of their videos in my subscription feed, I'm like, okay, let me just skip ahead and watch their videos. And so this month I wanted to do a reading vlog where I read recommendations from them to see if I really do like the books that they recommend, and I guess kind of see if I have similar taste to them, or do I just really love their personalities and their video content. And these are all booktubers who have kind of like bigger platforms. I also watch a lot that have smaller platforms too, but yeah, for this video, I'm just kind of focusing on 3 of like the bigger booktubers that I love. So starting out, we have Chandler Ainsley. She is kind of known as more of a romance booktuber. She's like the romance queen, but she also does read from other genres as well. Because she reads so much romance and I'm more of like a newer romance reader, I always saw her as someone where I didn't necessarily read the same books as her or have the same opinions, but I just really love her content and her personality and kind of just how she does her videos. But over the years, I have become more of a romance reader, and so now I am actually able to take more of her recommendations, which has been great. So the book I'm going to be reading from her was one of her best books of 2023. I should say these are all books from their best lists of 2023, but it is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is a contemporary romance book with some magical realism elements. I enjoyed Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, but it wasn't like my favorite romance by any means. Chandler, I believe, liked this one much more than the Dead Romantics, so I'm hoping that I feel the same and like this one a lot more. She really raved about this book from last year, so I'm very excited to read this one. Next up, there's Kayla from Books and Lala. I definitely don't read the same as Kayla. She reads a lot of like horror and weird books and nonfiction, and I don't really get into those types of books that much, but I love her videos, her video concepts, her really unique reading vlogs that she does. And on my channel, I love making cool little themed reading vlogs too, and she's definitely an inspiration in that way. Also love seeing the Canadian booktuber representation. Yeah, just really love her. The book I'm going to be reading from her 2023 best books list is going to be Monstrilio. This is the one I'm kind of most nervous for because it is a like literary horror book, which, as I said, I don't read a ton of that type of books. And this is a lot about grief because it deals with a mother who loses her son, and then she kind of like finds a way to bring her son back, but he is very changed, and I think he's kind of becomes like a little monster that is like causing havoc and stuff like that. So we're gonna see if I like this book as much as Kayla. The 3rd booktuber I'm going to read from is Sarah Without an H. I find her channel so entertaining. She's so funny and has such a great personality. Again, I don't feel like I agree with her on that many of her book recommendations. She reads a lot of romance. She reads thrillers and fantasy too, but I feel like I have had opposite opinions of her a lot, so we'll have to see how this goes. But the book from her I'm gonna read is Book of Night by Holly Black. This is one that was already on my radar, but so many people actually hated this book when it came out, but Sarah was a defender of it and put it on her best books of 2023 list last year. So I want to see if I will agree with her and I will love it, or if I'll kind of agree with the rest of the world and not like it as much. This is a fantasy book. It's Holly Black's first adult fantasy. I have enjoyed her young adult fantasy. I think it has to do with shadow magic, and I don't really know a ton about it other than that, but excited to check this one out too. So let's get into the vlog, see what I think of these books, and by some weird chance that you don't know these booktubers, definitely go check out their channels because I love them. They make such great content. But let's see if I agree with their book recommendations. Why do people think it's okay to listen to their music out loud? Like, hello? Have you heard of headphones? want to hear your music. Alright, hello, it is time for a little check-in. I have been reading Monstrilio and I am about halfway through now. Originally, I had actually planned to read the 7-Year Slip first, but then I was thinking about the timing of things and I'm actually going to LA this week, my first time ever going to California, and I was like, it doesn't really make sense to be reading like a horror book, like a sad horror book when I'm going to LA, reading on my way there and at the beach and stuff like that. So I'm gonna save the 7-Year Slip, the romance, for then. And so I've been reading Monstrilio now. So this is the one that is probably the most kind of out of my comfort zone, or the only one that really is out of my comfort zone, but I am having a good time with it so far. So we open up in the book with our main character, Magos, I think her name was, and her son has passed away. They're still kind of with his dead body. They haven't taken him to the hospital or anything yet. She has her husband there, and then when he leaves the room, she ends up like cutting him open and taking a piece of his lung. Like she wants to have a piece of him, and his lung was very important because he was actually born with only one lung. So he's been having like health issues and issues with his lung his whole life. So she took a piece of his lung. Bit weird, definitely a bit weird, but obviously she is struggling with grieving for Santiago, her son. She ends up going back home to Mexico because that is where her family is originally from. She's living with her mom. While she's there, she ends up speaking with her mom's partner, and she shares this story about how someone that she knew or something had this heart, and they fed the heart, and then it grew into a person. And so this really inspires her, our main character, to feed the piece of the lung to see what happens. And as you can imagine, the lung starts to grow into a little creature and become like a little sentient being who is eventually going to, you know, grow to be Monstrilio, they end up calling him. Obviously, this is very much about the grief that this woman and this whole family is going through, and I would say kind of an allegory of like, I guess, how this woman's grief is going to be affecting everyone, because now so many people in her life are affected by the fact that she has decided to feed and grow this lung into this little monster. It is definitely a little bit of a different book for me. I don't read a ton of literary horror or books with like little monsters in it, so that is interesting and disturbing. As I said before, I am liking it. I don't think I'm gonna end up loving it, just because the themes of grief and everything, like, I don't think I overly love reading about grief. And I don't know if it's because I can't relate to it as much. Luckily, I have not lost a ton of people in my life or that I'm close to. I definitely see a lot more people out here on Booktube and everything that really enjoy stories about grief a lot more than I do. So I don't think I'm going to necessarily be as moved by this story as some other people, but I am enjoying it so far. It's definitely weird and upsetting, and the writing is good. The writing makes you want to keep reading. It is quite beautiful. And I should say, we've also changed the perspective we're reading from now. We're actually reading from our main characters, or the mother's friend, Lena. So now we're kind of learning more about this other character who is also queer. So that's good, because I didn't necessarily plan on my TBR this month to have queer rep. It is Pride. It is the 1st of June, so I should have done that. But it's nice to know that like I am reading a book with some sapphic rep going on, and Lena has her own kind of traumas and issues, and then I think we're going to get a few more different points of view. I'm curious if we're going to get to hear from Monstrilio. I think we might. He's actually started talking now. I'm interested to see like what is going to happen and how much it's going to escalate, because obviously he is growing. He now can speak. Like, it's definitely reminding me of Little Shop of Horrors, which is a movie I only watched for the first time last year. But obviously that has to do with like this plant that they are feeding, who then just becomes like more evil and wants to eat more and more. So I think it's going to be similar to that. So yeah, it's Saturday today, so I've been reading quite a bit to clean the house. I went out, did some errands, as you saw. Not sure how much more I'm going to read today, because once Dakota's off work, we'll probably, you know, eat dinner and hang out the rest of the night. But I definitely should finish this before my LA trip, so I'll check in again once I have finished Monstrilio. Who's my little Monstrilio? Oh. Monstrilio. Oh. Alright, I've just finished Monstrilio. Overall, I really did enjoy this book. The second half was definitely a different vibe than the first half, and it was definitely different than I expected. But overall, like, I am glad that I read this, and I definitely would recommend this. Definitely for Pride Month, the book actually continued to feature a lot of queer characters. I would say pretty much every character in this book was queer, actually. But yeah, I'm glad I read it. I think I would probably rate it 4 stars. I don't think it could quite be a 5-star for me. It was really good that I read this book and kind of got out of my comfort zone of thrillers, fantasy, and romance, which are the genres I typically stick to. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I love Kayla and her content, but I think this was a good kind of experiment to do to show that like I should read more of her book recommendations as well. She reads so many unique like horror books and literary books, and I think I should take more of those recommendations because I think it's just a more interesting reading experience than just sticking with my typical genres. So I'm definitely glad I read this, and I would overall recommend this to everyone. If you liked how I described it before, it definitely does shift a little bit more in the second half, as I said, but I don't want to get into like spoilers or anything with what happens. But it's very beautiful, it's very sad, it's very character driven. We really are focused on this little family, all of their relationships with Monstrilio, or he later goes by M. Yeah, I'm really happy that I read this. It was definitely a very quick, easy book for me to read. I think I read it in basically 2 days, maybe 2 or 3 days. Very good, very weird, but very good. So thank you, Kayla, for this book recommendation. I will move on to either The 7-Year Slip or Book of Night. I'm actually not sure which one I'm gonna start next. Hey vlog, sorry for the not great lighting, but it is the night before I leave for my trip. I think you can see my suitcase back here behind me. I'm just gonna do my last minute packing. I'm only at like 30 something% of the 7-Year Slip. I really wanted to do a 50% update before I left on my trip, but I just didn't get time to read yesterday, so it kind of put me off schedule a little bit. But I did just want to check in before I went on my flight because I don't know how much I'm going to be able to update when I'm away. I'm assuming I'm going to finish the book when I'm away, so I wanted to check in first. But so far it's going very well, and I think it's very promising to be a really great romance for me. We have our main character in this, Clementine, and she works in publishing. She actually works in the publicity department, so another main character working in publishing from Ashley Poston, and I really like that. As someone who also works in publishing, I don't work exactly in book publishing, but similar kind of field, and as a book lover, of course, I find that interesting. But she is going through a bit of a hard time right now because her aunt recently passed away, or I guess it's been 6 months since her aunt passed away, and they were very, very close. So this has another similarity to The Dead Romantics, is that our main character is dealing with some grief, dealing with the fact that she lost a loved one. Also, she's the type of character that's like very, very work focused. She's struggling with dating. She's not really having luck in that department. So anyways, her aunt left her apartment in New York City, so she's been living there, and her aunt always told her that her apartment was magical and that it could travel through time 7 years, either 7 years to the future or 7 years to the past. But Clementine never experienced that in all her years visiting. But this weekend, she is finally experiencing it. The apartment is traveling her back in time 7 years to when this man, Ewan, was staying at her aunt's apartment over the summer. So now she is like forced to live with this man for, I think, just a weekend. At least that's all I've seen so far. And they are just kind of bonding, getting to know each other. He is a chef, and he's just like a really sweet, charismatic, nice guy, and they're just having some really cute moments together. It has the forced proximity of kind of like the roommates trope, and like there's only one bed, and so I'm just loving that. Her writing author kind of reminds me of Sarah Hogel, I think, who's one of my favorite romance authors. There's just like a silliness to it and like a very lightheartedness to it that I really enjoy. Like, it's quite funny, and I find that it's balancing the grief stuff better. It was kind of not annoying me in Dead Romantics, but it was almost like too heavy on the grief. I think because the main character had lost her father and it had like just happened. But I think the fact that this character lost her aunt at least like 6 months ago is making it a little better. Also nice is there is a huge focus on traveling, which I think is kind of funny considering the fact that I'm going to be going on a trip while reading this book. So I think that's a really nice coincidence because Clementine and her aunt used to always go on trips together. And so I am really liking the elements of including the aunt and the aunt's life. And then the romance is just really cute. The only thing is it's going a little bit quick. And I think the reason that has to happen, like the reason it's not being dragged out into more of a slow burn romance, is because of the time travel twist and that she's eventually going to come back to present day. I think they're only going to have like this weekend together to really develop their feelings, and then maybe we're going to come back to like present day, and that's when she's going to get to know him in present day. I'm not sure. As I said, I'm only 30-something% of the way through. Other than that, it is going really, really well, and I look forward to just maybe finishing the whole thing on my plane ride tomorrow if I'm not too tired. And yeah, I definitely think it's going better than the Dead Romantics. Should we look at what I pack as a diabetic going on a trip? This is a new tote bag that I got from Amazon. I forget the brand name. Basically, my bag is full of like extra diabetes stuff. I have my whole diabetes bag, T1D Warrior, which has like my testing kit. I have to bring an extra sensor, which is the thing I wear on my arm in case that falls off or anything. I have this little pouch full of extra insulin pods for when I have to change my insulin pump. So I've got to bring extra just in case. I have this whole thing of Skittles for if I have a low blood sugar ever on the trip, so I can have some candy handy. Then I'm gonna put my insulin in here too, but it's just still in the fridge because it needs to stay cold. Yeah, that's a little what's in my bag as a diabetic. Hey guys, it is like I think day 3 of our trip here in LA. I had a moment alone in the hotel, so I thought I would finally check in because I did completely binge and finish the 7-Year Slip on my plane ride here. I actually enjoyed it so much. I love that I had that book to just spend my whole time reading on the plane ride. A very bingeable, amazing book. Speaking of that, I did actually rate it 5 stars, which I never do for romance, or like I rarely do for romance. So I'm so happy that I completely loved this one, especially after I didn't love the Dead Romantics. Like, it was fine. So Chandler, like, I'm so glad that I did this video reading one of her favorite books. I think I said before that me and Chandler, we sometimes have the same opinions on books and sometimes we don't. And I'm really glad that in this case we did agree on this, but I honestly think this is such a universally likable book. Like, I really think everyone could like this. I should talk more about the plot. Okay, because I last updated very early on, but basically from that point, she did start interacting with Ewan in present day more, and she found that he was such a different person than the one she knew from 7 years ago. He was a little bit more like grumpy, not as much of an optimistic, kind of young, bright-eyed kind of guy. It looked like he had been through some stuff since she first met him. And then we also continue to get the flashbacks too. So I'm glad that we continue to kind of develop that relationship, because I was a little bit apprehensive about how quickly they fell for each other initially, but that did not become a problem. Like, it just really made sense for the story. I just thought it was like perfect, like such a great focus on the romance, but it still had so much focus on Clementine as a character and her growth, and same with Ewan. And I just really like how everything came together. It was beautiful, and I actually was like crying on the plane a little bit. Like I was trying to hide it from my mom sitting beside me because I was like tearing up at some of this. Also, just reading the author's note from Ashley Poston or Poston, whichever it is, that was very emotional as well. And so I just highly recommend this book. But what's funny though, actually, I was looking up the reviews, and I think Kayla and Sarah both also read this book. And what's really funny is that Sarah actually gave it a 1 star. And I'm reading one of her favorite books next, so that should be interesting. I'm kind of glad I saved Sarah's book for last, because I feel like she is the person where it's like I have many books like examples like this where she hates a book that I love. So I think this next book could be really interesting. Again, love Sarah, love her videos, her personality, everything. But I am actually getting a little bit worried now because she gave 7 Years Live 1 star, but I gave it 5 stars. So let's get back into the LAB role. I'm not sure how great of a job I'm doing with that. Checking in, I'm at a work retreat. Look at my room. 2 beds, huge. Love it. Hey guys, it has been a minute since I checked in. I think it's been nearly a whole week since I've been back from my trip. I know I didn't do the best B-roll while I was there, but anyway, as I think I also showed you, I came back for like 1 day and then I went on a work retreat for 2 more days. So my reading has been very disrupted since I started Book of Night on the plane ride home. But I did finally reach the halfway point. I don't know if I told you guys, I did actually invest and buy this book. I didn't even realize it was a signed copy that I got from Book Outlet, so it was discounted. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like my experience with the first half of this book hasn't been the greatest, just because I have been like so tired when I've been trying to read it, either on the plane or when I got back from like both of my trips. It's just been very broken up, but I am finally able to have some time to just sit and focus on reading. And I think now I'm gonna enjoy the reading experience a lot more. We don't have too much left because, okay, this is an adult fantasy book. It's 300 pages. Which is so weird to me. I feel like most fantasy books in general, even like a young adult, would be more than 300 pages. I feel like 300 would be more for like a thriller or something. But I was realizing that the Folk of the Air series by her also was kind of short and I was wanting more from it. So I guess this is just like how Holly Black is. She writes her books very like condensed. But anyways, our main character in this book is a girl named Charlie Hall. She, I think, is like 28 in current day, and essentially she is like a con artist. She didn't have the best upbringing, and she kind of from a young age started getting trained in like scamming and conning people. I will say we're getting a lot of flashbacks to her upbringing and when she was learning all of this, and those have been the most interesting parts in my opinion. I've really been getting into those little flashback stories that we've been getting. Present day is a little bit more confusing because in present day we are also dealing with this magic system. So it hasn't always been around. It is an urban fantasy, so this sort of shadow magic, I guess, only started more recently. but I feel like I'm not fully understanding all of it, and some of that's been because I've been so tired and just what I was talking about before. But essentially there are like a few different types of shadow like magic powers they can have. Like some people can manipulate their own shadows into like looking different. Some people can manipulate other people's shadows. I think some people can like send their shadows off to like do things separate from their body. All of that is a little bit confusing for me, and I feel like Holly kind of had this idea in her head, and I don't know how well she's really fleshing it out and explaining it to us. But I think I'm starting to understand it a little bit more, especially now that Charlie is starting to experience some of that firsthand with her shadow. And basically also in current day, the main thing is that she's looking for this book. She kind of got wrapped up in this job, even though I think she was trying to get out of all this conning stuff. She kind of gets wrapped up into this job again because she comes across like a murder. Anyways, I can't keep track of all of our characters in present day, and like it's not sticking with me like who everyone is, but all I know is like she is trying to get her hands on this book. Yeah, anyway, so I am enjoying parts of it, but I don't think it's gonna be a perfect read for me. I definitely don't think it's gonna be 5 stars or anything like that, but I do enjoy Holly's writing, and I do find it very easy to read. I mean, I think I'm gonna read the second half very quick now that I actually have time to read it, but it's not necessarily standing out to me. Like there have been some parts where I'm like, why are we learning so much about these random characters that don't really seem relevant when we only have 300 pages? Like it's not a lot to work with, but there's still elements that I am intrigued by and am liking. So we will have to see now that I actually have more time to read. Guys, I finished Book of Night by Holly Black, and I actually feel so good about this book. I actually really enjoyed it so much. Obviously, mostly the second half, because when I checked in before, like I was having a few issues with it. And I'm not gonna lie, like, do I fully grasp everything that happened with this world and with the characters? No, but I actually really loved our main character, Charlie. I think she really is what made this book so good. So that must be something Holly Black is really good at, because Jude from the Cruel Prince series, I really loved her character too. Charlie, I feel, is a little bit of a similar character where she's a bit like morally gray, a badass, right? As I already talked about before, this con artist, very reckless, and just a very, very fun character to follow. So I think she's part of what made this book so fun. We also got a bit of a twist towards the end of the book that I really liked and wasn't something that necessarily crossed my mind, and there was a lot of action and crazy stuff that happened at the end too that was just so exciting that I couldn't put this book down towards the end. So I'm very happy with this. I see why Sarah loved it. I could see why some people wouldn't, obviously, especially at my halfway point review. Like I could have understood why some people wouldn't love it, but after finishing it, I feel like I don't really understand people who didn't love it, because I feel like it was actually very strong. There's even a little romance in here that I really enjoyed too. So I'm gonna give it 4 stars, I think, just because, as I said before, like it couldn't be exactly perfect. Oh, thanks Peach for showing your butt. But yeah, I ended up enjoying this a lot. I think there's going to be another book in the series, right? It ended in a way where I was kind of content with the whole story wrapping up, but it did leave room for a sequel. So I am looking forward to continuing the series, again, mainly because of Charlie and because of Charlie and Vince. Yeah, so a little bit of a surprise, because I do think me and Sarah have very different tastes in books, but clearly we do have some overlap, and I'm really happy about that, and I'm happy the book I chose to read for this vlog worked out. And so that means overall I think that this vlog was really, really successful. I think I already knew I loved the content from all 3 of these booktubers Booktubers, and now I also know that I love the same books as them, or some of the same books as them. I'm really glad that I did this video and kind of forced me to check out some books that weren't necessarily at the top of my TBR before. I got out of my comfort zone a little bit with Monstrilio, and then I really loved A 7-Year Slip and Book of Night. So thank you, Kayla, Chandler, and Sarah, for making great content that I love and find very inspiring, and for giving your great book recommendations. This video took me a little bit longer to film with all of my travels and busy schedule, but I'm glad we finally made it here. Be sure to leave me a comment down below if you have any thoughts like on these books, or you can let me know who your favorite booktubers are for me to check out. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you guys in my next video very soon. Bye from me and Pete. Bye.